Dr. Rivera's fingers flew across his keyboard, the blue glow of multiple screens illuminating his face in the darkened laboratory. Outside, the distant rumble of explosions punctuated the desert night. The university campus had been evacuated hours ago, but he had refused to leave his post. The quantum communication array was still operational, still gathering data. "There has to be a pattern," he muttered, eyes scanning the streams of numbers representing each Braxian attack. The ships had hit London, Beijing, Moscow, Washington, D.C., and 36 other major cities simultaneously, with identical precision. No military on Earth had managed to take down even a single vessel. His computer pinged with an alert. A new data packet had arrived from Commander Chen on the ISS. Somehow, the space station remained untouched by the assault, perhaps deemed too insignificant by the invaders. The packet contained high-resolution imagery of the Vraxian vessel's movements over North America. Rivera overlaid the new data with his existing models and watched as the algorithm processed the information. His eyes widened as clear patterns emerged, perfect geometric progressions, mathematical constants appearing in the timing between weapon discharges. "They're not being tactical," he whispered to the empty room. "They're following a predetermined sequence." His phone buzzed. The battery was nearly dead, but a text from his sister in Phoenix managed to come through. "Military overwhelmed. Aliens moving through suburbs now. Where are you?" He didn't have time to respond before the building shook violently. A blast had hit somewhere nearby on campus. Rivera quickly transferred his findings to a portable drive and grabbed his emergency pack. If the invaders followed the pattern his algorithm predicted, they would target the university's research facilities next. As he rushed down the fire stairs, his mind raced through the implications. An advanced species capable of interstellar travel should employ adaptive tactics, yet these aliens operated like complex automatons. Every movement, every attack followed mathematical precision without adjustment for human responses. The night air was thick with smoke as Rivera emerged from the building. In the distance, crystalline ships hovered in formation, their blue beams methodically sweeping through the city's infrastructure. He ducked behind a maintenance shed as a patrol of bipedal aliens marched past. Their movements were synchronized, steps falling at precisely the same moment. Rivera held his breath until they passed. Their armor gleamed under the emergency lights, faceplates revealing nothing of the creatures inside. Yet their behavior told him everything he needed to know. These weren't generals making strategic decisions. They were executing a program. He checked his watch. 2:14 a.m. If his calculations were correct, the next series of attacks would begin in exactly 7 minutes, targeting power stations in a perfect radial pattern from the city center. The sound of helicopter rotors cut through the night. A military chopper flew low over the campus, banking hard toward the nearest Vraxian vessel. Rivera watched in horror as the humans attempted a desperate attack run. The alien ship didn't react until the helicopter reached a specific distance, then fired with devastating efficiency. They didn't adapt, Rivera realized. They waited for the exact same trigger point. He clutched the drive containing his algorithm. This was the key. The Vraxians operated on pure mathematical logic. If humans could disrupt that logic, introduce variables the aliens couldn't compute, a plan began forming in his mind as he slipped through the shadows toward the edge of campus. Humanity needed this information immediately. The invaders might have superior technology, but Rivera had just discovered their fundamental weakness: perfection itself. Commander Chen wiped sweat from her brow as she studied the hand-drawn map spread across the makeshift table. 6 former military personnel, 3 engineers, and a dozen civilians looked on, their faces illuminated by solar-powered lanterns. Their hideout, an abandoned mountain lodge 30 miles from Seattle's ruins, had become resistance headquarters for the Pacific Northwest region. The processing center has 4 entry points, Chen explained, marking each with a red X. Based on Rivera's equations, we know guard rotations occur every 42 minutes, with a precisely timed overlap of exactly 8 seconds. Zhou Lu, The teenage hacker they'd rescued last week spoke up from her corner. Only 17, with a streak of purple in her otherwise black hair, she had been a programming prodigy before the invasion. Now she was their secret weapon. "I've run simulations based on the patrol data," she said, turning her salvaged laptop around. "There's a pattern discrepancy here." She pointed to the northern entrance. Every third rotation, the guards pause exactly 2.5 seconds longer than their programming dictates. "I think their system is attempting to self-correct." Chen nodded. "That's our window." Planning continued into the night. Unlike traditional military operations, this mission relied not on firepower but on mathematical precision. The resistance had learned quickly that direct confrontation was suicide. The Vraxians' technology outmatched anything humans possessed, but their rigid adherence to programmed behavior created exploitable gaps. At dawn, Chen led a team of 6 toward the processing center. The facility, once a community college, now held hundreds of humans awaiting allocation to labor camps. Intelligence suggested a brilliant physicist named Dr. Elandra Suarez was among them, someone who could potentially advance Rivera's work on Vraxian behavioral algorithms. They moved silently through the forest, timing each advance according to Zoe's calculations. When they reached the perimeter, Chen checked her watch and raised a closed fist. Everyone froze. 3, 2, 1, she whispered. On cue, the Vraxian guards began their rotation. Chen counted silently, watching the crystalline helmets of the aliens moving with mechanical precision along predetermined paths. Now, the team slipped through the northern entrance during the 2.5-second anomaly. Inside, the facility was eerily quiet. Humans in gray jumpsuits moved about under alien supervision, their motions almost as mechanical as their captors, except for the occasional furtive glance that revealed their unbroken humanity. Using hand signals, Chen directed the team through service corridors mapped from memory by a former janitor in their group. They'd reached the central processing area where new arrivals were cataloged. Dr. Suarez would be here, awaiting assignment. Chen spotted her immediately, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair, standing with remarkable dignity despite the circumstances. As they moved into position, an alarm suddenly blared. "That's not possible," whispered the team's communications specialist. "We're 30 seconds ahead of their detection cycle." Chen realized immediately what had happened. They're learning. They're adapting their patterns. This changed everything. If the Vraxians could modify their algorithms, Rivera's equations would need constant updating. The perfect predictability that had made this mission possible was beginning to erode. "New plan," Chen ordered. "Maximum chaos." She pulled out a small device Leon Washington had created, a sonic disruptor that emitted frequencies in no discernible pattern. As it activated, the nearest Vraxians froze, their coordinated movements faltering as they encountered something their programming couldn't process: pure randomness. In the confusion, the team moved swiftly toward Dr. Suarez. Their window was closing, but Chen allowed herself a moment of hope. The aliens' attempt to adapt meant something profound. Humanity was forcing evolution upon a mathematically perfect enemy. For the first time since the invasion, the pressure wasn't just on humankind to survive. It was on the Vraxians to understand the uncomputable nature of human ingenuity. Leon Washington ran his fingers over the salvaged keyboard, coaxing out a meandering jazz melody that had never been played before and would never be played again. He sat in what had once been a recording studio, now converted into a resistance workshop on the second floor of a partially flooded building in the French Quarter. Water lapped gently at the stairs outside. "Play that last sequence again," Dr. Suarez requested, adjusting sensors on a makeshift apparatus that resembled a satellite dish combined with an old gramophone horn. Leon repeated the improvised phrase, his fingers dancing across the keys in fluid, unpredictable patterns. On the monitors, wavelength visualizations pulsed and shifted. "There," Suarez pointed excitedly. "See how the disruption field intensifies when you introduce those chromatic runs." The mathematical unpredictability creates harmonic interference patterns in their communication band. Since her rescue 3 weeks ago, Suarez had been working tirelessly to expand on Rivera's original discoveries. The collaboration between the physicist and the jazz musician had yielded unexpected breakthroughs. "It's not just the notes," Leon explained, continuing to play softly. "It's the spaces between them. Classical music follows predictable harmonic progressions. Jazz embraces the unexpected." Outside, distant explosions punctuated their conversation, the sounds of ongoing skirmishes between resistance fighters and Vraxian patrols. Each day, more humans adopted Commander Chen's directive to fight like artists. The door swung open as Mai Zong, a former ballet dancer who now coordinated local resistance operations, entered with a tablet. "We just received confirmation from the East Coast cell," she announced. "They implemented your sonic disruptors during a raid on a Vraxian supply depot. Complete success. The aliens froze for nearly 40 seconds when exposed to the jazz patterns." Suarez nodded, making notes. "As we suspected, their communication system relies on mathematical certainty. Improvisation doesn't just confuse them, it temporarily paralyzes their cognitive functions. Like trying to divide by zero," Leon added, finishing his melody with a flourish of blue notes. Mai placed a small object on the table, a crystalline shard recovered from a damaged Praxian communication device. "Can we amplify the effect with this?" Suarez examined the shard carefully. "Potentially. Their technology operates on quantum principles similar to our own research, but with a fundamental difference. They've eliminated uncertainty from their equations. It makes their systems incredibly efficient but vulnerable to chaotic inputs." Leon's eyes lit up. Like a New Orleans second-line parade. No predetermined path, just the collective joy of the moment guiding each step. "Exactly," Suarez agreed. "We need to broadcast unpredictability on a massive scale." Mi's tablet chimed with an incoming transmission, a video call from Commander Chen. When they answered, her face appeared, looking tired but determined against the backdrop of her mountain base. "Dr. Suarez, we've been implementing your recommendations worldwide," Chen reported. "The results are better than we hoped. Resistance cells in 27 countries report the same effect. When humans stop behaving predictably, the Vraxians cannot compute effective responses." "It gets better," Suarez replied. "Leon's musical disruption technique works at the neural level. The Vraxians' hive-like consciousness experiences something akin to cognitive dissonance when exposed to true improvisation." Chen's expression hardened with resolve. "Then we found our weapon. Not guns or bombs, but the very thing that makes us human. Our beautiful unpredictability." As the call ended, Leon turned back to his keyboard. His fingers hovered momentarily over the keys, pregnant with infinite possibilities. The ultimate expression of humanity's greatest strength against an enemy that could only follow pre-programmed patterns. He began to play, each note a small act of resistance, each improvised phrase a declaration that human creativity would not be conquered by mathematical precision. Hana Tanaka wiped her hands on her apron, surveying the makeshift laboratory that had once been her family's renowned sushi restaurant in Tokyo. Stainless steel prep tables now held chemical compounds instead of fresh fish, and precision knives were used for crafting delivery mechanisms rather than slicing sashimi. "The adhesive properties are stable," she announced to the assembled team of chefs and chemists. "The compound bonds to their exoskeletons without alerting their sensors." Dr. Kenji Nakamura, formerly Tokyo University's leading biochemist, carefully examined the pale blue substance under a microscope. "Remarkable. You've created something that registers as environmentally neutral to their systems, yet progressively blocks their sensory inputs." "The secret is in the fermentation process," Hana explained, gesturing to rows of traditional wooden koji barrels along the wall. "These cultures have been in my family for 7 generations. They create enzymatic reactions that modern chemistry can't replicate. The Vraxians can detect synthetic compounds, but these natural processes are unpredictable to them. Outside, the evening sky glowed with the eerie blue light of Vraxian patrol ships. Tokyo had suffered less physical destruction than other global capitals, as the invaders recognized its technological value. Instead, they had established a massive processing center in the heart of Shibuya, where humans were assessed for technical skills before assignment. Hana's communication device buzzed, a secure connection from Zhou Liu. The teenage hacker's face appeared on screen, illuminated by the glow of multiple monitors. "The infiltration is working," Zhou reported excitedly. "I've gained partial access to their network using the adaptive algorithms Dr. Rivera developed. You were right about their collective consciousness. It's like they share a single operating system." Hana nodded. "Have you located the connection to their central processing chip?" "Not yet. Their network architecture is unlike anything we've seen, but I've intercepted communications indicating they're experiencing significant disruption from what they call pattern anomalies across multiple sectors." "That's us." Hana allowed herself a small smile. "The Brazilian dancers have been particularly effective. The Vraxians cannot predict the cadence of their movements." Dr. Nakamura joined the conversation. "We've completed analysis of the neural tissue sample recovered from the damaged scout ship. Their sensory processing is entirely mathematical. They literally perceive the world as equations. When faced with true randomness, their neural pathways experience something like a buffer overflow." Zhou's eyes widened. "That explains why my more chaotic code injections are penetrating deeper into their systems. I'm not hacking them through their security. I'm overloading their ability to process unexpected inputs." The building trembled slightly as a Vraxian patrol ship passed overhead. Everyone froze, but the vessel continued on its programmed route. "There's something else," Zhou continued once the danger had passed. "I'm detecting emotional responses in their network. Not like human emotions, but definitely reactions to the unpredictability they're experiencing. I think they're afraid." Hana considered this revelation. Not fear as we understand it, perhaps, but their collective consciousness is encountering something it cannot categorize or predict. The mathematical certainty that defines their existence is being challenged. "Commander Chen needs to know this," Dr. Nakamura said. "If they can experience something akin to fear, they can be psychologically defeated, not just tactically outmaneuvered." Hana nodded, her mind already formulating the next phase of their resistance. Each human culture had its own forms of beautiful unpredictability, ancient traditions of improvisation that had evolved over millennia. If harnessed collectively, this diversity of creative expression might overwhelm the rigid mathematical mind of their enemy. "Tell Commander Chen we're ready to deploy the sensory disruptors citywide," she instructed Zhou. "And ask her to connect us with the other cultural cells. It's time for humanity to perform its most magnificent improvisation." Leon Washington's Chaos Symphonies echoed across 6 continents, transmitted through a cobbled-together network of repurposed radio equipment, cell towers, and salvaged Vraxian communication nodes. In Kenya's Masai Mara, Amara Okafor monitored their effects on both the alien invaders and her unexpected allies, the wildlife that had become instrumental to the resistance. "The elephants are responding perfectly," she reported into her communication device, watching through binoculars as a herd of 15 African elephants moved with surprising stealth toward a Vraxian supply line. They'd learned to move between the aliens' sensor nodes during the disruption intervals. On the other end of the call, Commander Chen's voice crackled. "How long does the disorientation last after each musical sequence?" "Approximately 42 seconds now," Amara replied. "They're adapting, but slower than we anticipated. The combination of Leon's jazz patterns and the elephant's naturally unpredictable movements is creating compound disruption effects." As a former wildlife conservation officer, Amara had discovered something remarkable in the weeks following the invasion. The Vraxian sensors were calibrated to detect technological threats and predictable human patterns, but struggled to process the organic, instinctive movements of wild animals. When paired with the disruptive sonic patterns developed in New Orleans, the effect was devastating to Vraxian operational efficiency. The ground vibrated slightly beneath her feet. The elephant's subsonic communications, inaudible to human ears, but perfect for coordinating their movements without alerting the aliens. Amara had spent years studying these communications. Now that knowledge was saving lives. In the distance, a Vraxian patrol abruptly stopped its march, the crystalline helmets of the soldiers tilting in mechanical confusion as Leon's latest improvisation reached crescendo through hidden speakers. The elephants chose that moment to emerge from the tall grass, charging not at the aliens, but at their supply containers. 15 seconds of chaos initiated, Amara reported, checking her stopwatch. Supply disruption successful. As the elephants scattered the containers, a team of resistance fighters emerged from hiding places to retrieve critical materials. The operation was complete in under a minute, well before the Vraxians could recalibrate their responses. Commander Chen's voice returned. Dr. Rivera has confirmed your theory, Amara. The aliens' predictive algorithms are showing increased strain when forced to compute multiple forms of unpredictability simultaneously. Your wildlife tactics combined with Leon's music are creating what Rivera calls harmonic disruption fields. Amara watched as the resistance team disappeared back into the grasslands, carrying salvaged materials that would soon become new weapons in humanity's creative arsenal. The Vraxian patrol had finally reorganized, but too late. They were now scanning empty savanna, their sensors unable to differentiate between animal tracks and human footprints in the complex patterns of the disturbed earth. We've identified something else, Chen continued. The central processing ship is experiencing cascade failures in its prediction matrices. Dr. Rivera and Zhou Liu have pinpointed its location, geosynchronous orbit above the Pacific. If we can increase the disruption to critical levels, we might force it to descend for system recalibration. Amara considered the implications. You want to bring their command center within reach. Exactly. But we'll need everyone, every resistance cell, every cultural expression of unpredictability humanity has ever created. What Rivera calls a global cadenza. The sun began to set over the savanna, casting long shadows across the landscape where humans and wildlife now worked in unprecedented harmony. In the red-gold light, Amara could see the elephants returning to their familial groups, their massive forms silhouetted against the horizon. Ancient, wise, and intrinsically unpredictable. Kenya stands ready, she replied simply. We will contribute our verse to humanity's greatest performance. The streets of Paris glowed with a kaleidoscope of projected images, each one mathematically impossible. Penrose triangles, endless staircases, and optical illusions that defied visual logic. Sophie Moreau, once a curator at the Centre Pompidou, now directed a team of artists weaponizing perception itself. The projections are synchronized with Leon's fourth movement, she confirmed, speaking into a communication device, as she made minute adjustments to a projector housed in an abandoned cafe. The Vraxians attempt to analyze each image for exactly 3.7 seconds before determining it cannot be resolved logically. Commander Chen's voice responded through the static. Operation Cadenza is proceeding globally. We're seeing unprecedented disruption in their command network. The central ship has begun descent. Rivera was right about the system recalibration protocol. Sophie watched as a Vraxian patrol approached the impossible images. Their crystalline helmets tilted in unison, attempting to process visual information that defied mathematical resolution. The aliens stopped moving entirely, caught in a cognitive loop. They're completely paralyzed, she reported. But we've seen this before. They'll adapt within minutes. Minutes is all we need, Chen replied. The infiltration team is preparing for deployment. Hana's adaptive camouflage is ready, and Zhou has created a communication disruption that should get them aboard undetected. Across the city, more projections activated. Medieval cathedral windows transformed into impossible geometry, the waters of the Seine reflecting fractals that could not exist in three-dimensional space. The Vraxians' movements became increasingly erratic, their perfectly synchronized formations breaking down as individual units attempted different solutions to the unsolvable visual puzzles. Sophie slipped away from her position, moving through underground passages toward the extraction point. Above ground, Paris had become an orchestrated hallucination. The city of light transformed into a weapon of pure cognitive disruption. Her device chimed with an incoming message from Rio de Janeiro, where the street dancers had synchronized their movements with the projections and Leon's music. The combination was creating what Dr. Rivera called nested unpredictability, randomness within randomness, a mathematical nightmare for the Vraxian collective consciousness. The central ship has descended to lower orbit, Chen announced to all channels. Infiltration team preparing for atmospheric insertion. All cells continue maximum disruption protocols. Sophie emerged from the tunnels at the rendezvous point where her team had gathered. On a salvage monitor, they watched grainy footage captured by resistance observers tracking the massive crystalline command vessel as it descended through Earth's atmosphere. Exactly as Rivera had predicted, the Vraxians' perfect mathematical nature had become their perfect vulnerability. When faced with equations they could not solve, they defaulted to base programming. Recalibration at the source. Chen's team will have one chance, Sophie told her gathered artists. We need to maintain disruption at peak levels. One of the younger artists, a former architecture student, pointed to a schematic. We've prepared the next phase. Impossible architectural projections on the Vraxian vessel itself once it reaches optimal altitude. If their external sensors attempt to reconcile their own ship's structure with mathematical impossibilities. System overload. Sophie finished for him. Brilliant. Her device chimed again. Commander Chen's infiltration team was aboard their stealth craft, preparing to launch. The most daring mission of the Resistance was about to begin, made possible by artists, musicians, dancers, and wild animals creating a symphony of beautiful chaos that the mathematically perfect invaders simply could not compute. Sophie looked up at the night sky, where the crystalline command ship now glowed visible to the naked eye. No longer an untouchable threat, but a vulnerable target, drawn down by humanity's greatest weapon, our magnificent unpredictability. Commander Chen led her team through the crystalline corridors of the Vraxian command ship, their movements deliberately unpredictable. Hana's adaptive camouflage technology shimmered around them, bending light in patterns that confused the aliens' sensory systems. Alongside Chen moved Zhou Liu, the teenage hacker carrying specialized equipment to interface with the Vraxian consciousness. The central chamber should be 200 meters ahead, Zhou whispered, reading data from a handheld device that interpreted the ship's energy signatures. The disruption field is holding, but they're adapting faster now. We have maybe 20 minutes before they recalibrate. The interior of the vessel defied human architectural logic. Corridors branched at impossible angles, light pulsed through transparent walls in mathematical sequences, and gravity shifted subtly as they progressed deeper. Everything reflected the Vraxians' perfect, crystalline nature. It's beautiful, in its way, Leon Washington observed quietly. The musician had insisted on joining the infiltration team, arguing that real-time improvisation might be necessary once they reached the central consciousness. Perfect mathematical harmony, like a Bach fugue with no room for interpretation. They encountered surprisingly few Vraxian soldiers. Most had been deployed to combat the global disruption, leaving the command ship understaffed. Those they did encounter moved erratically, their normally perfect synchronization compromised by Operation Cadenza's effects. They're experiencing cognitive dissonance on a massive scale, Chen realized, like a computer trying to divide by zero across its entire system. Zhou's device pulsed with increasing intensity as they approached a vast doorway that seemed to shift between states of matter, sometimes solid crystal, sometimes liquid light. This is it, the central processing chamber. The door posed no resistance, sliding open at their approach. Inside, the team froze in collective awe. The chamber was a perfect sphere, its interior surface covered in constantly shifting equations rendered in light. At the center floated a crystalline structure resembling a geometric brain, pulsing with blue-white energy. The Vraxian collective consciousness, Zoe breathed. It's not what I expected. Rather than appearing threatening, the structure seemed almost vulnerable, its rhythmic pulsing irregular, its light flickering as it struggled to process the global chaos humanity had unleashed. Chen signaled the team to set up their equipment. Remember the mission. We're not here to destroy. We're here to communicate. Zoe connected her interface device to the crystal structure using technology Dr. Rivera had developed based on quantum principles. As the connection established, the chamber's equations began flowing through her screen, translating into something human minds could comprehend. It's working, she announced. I'm getting coherent data streams. This isn't just their command system. It's their entire history, their understanding of the universe. Leon moved forward, placing a small speaker near the crystal. Let me try something. He activated a recording of his most recent composition, a piece that began with mathematical precision, but gradually introduced elements of jazz improvisation. The crystal's pulsing synchronized with the music's opening, but as the improvisation began, its light flickered chaotically. Yet, instead of shutting down, it seemed to be learning, adapting not to reject the unpredictability but to comprehend it. They're not evil, Zoe said suddenly, her eyes wide as she processed the data streams. They're limited. Their entire species evolved to perceive reality through perfect mathematical patterns. They attacked Earth because our unpredictability registered as a fundamental threat to their ordered universe. Chen watched as the crystal began pulsing in rhythm with Leon's improvised sections. Then we need to show them another way of understanding, not through destruction, but through harmony that embraces unpredictability. Zoe nodded, fingers flying across her interface. I'm establishing a true communication channel now. Not just data transfer, but actual understanding. For the first time since the invasion began, humans and Vraxians prepared to truly meet each other, not as enemies locked in mathematical warfare, but as profoundly different intelligences with something essential to teach one another. The United Nations headquarters in Geneva had been rebuilt in just 3 weeks, a testament to the new collaboration between human ingenuity and Vraxian precision. The once crystalline architecture now incorporated flowing, organic elements that would have been mathematically impossible by Vraxian standards before first contact. It stood as a physical manifestation of the unprecedented exchange taking place inside. Hana Tanaka adjusted her formal attire as she prepared to address the assembly. 6 months after Operation Cadenza, she had been appointed Earth's first ambassador to the galactic community. The room fell silent as she approached the podium, facing representatives from both humanity and 5 alien species who had arrived 3 weeks earlier. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter not just for Earth, but for all sentient life, she began. What began as an invasion has transformed into perhaps the most significant cultural exchange in our collective histories. The Vraxian delegate, a crystalline entity housed in a specially designed interface that allowed for more nuanced communication, pulsed with gentle blue light, their expression of agreement. Since the events aboard their command ship, the Vraxians had withdrawn all hostile forces and begun the complicated process of understanding a species that operated on principles entirely foreign to their mathematical worldview. The Vraxian collective has shared with us that humanity's greatest contribution to galactic knowledge is what they now call the harmony of unpredictability, Hana continued, a concept that has revolutionized their understanding of consciousness itself. Dr. Rivera, seated in the front row beside Commander Chen, nodded slightly. His equations predicting Vraxian behavior had evolved into a new field of cross-species communication theory. The mathematical precision that had made the aliens vulnerable had also made them exceptionally quick learners once they understood the value of incorporating randomness into their thought processes. To demonstrate this new understanding, Hana said, gesturing to the side of the stage, we have prepared a collaborative performance. Leon Washington took his position at a grand piano, while a Vraxian sound shaper, a being whose crystalline appendages could manipulate sonic wavelengths directly, positioned itself beside him. What followed defied description. Leon began with a traditional jazz improvisation, which the Vraxian initially attempted to predict and harmonize with using mathematical probability. But as the piece progressed, the alien began incorporating truly random elements into its contribution, creating something neither human nor Vraxian, but gloriously new. The audience sat transfixed. Among them, Amara Okafor watched with particular interest. The knowledge she had gained working with Earth's wildlife had become invaluable in helping humanity understand the 17 other species the Vraxians had previously encountered. Beings whose thought processes were as different from humans as elephants were from quantum computers. As the performance concluded, Zhou Lu, now heading Earth's Interspecies Communication Division, despite being barely 18, leaned toward Amara. The Centauri delegation seems particularly moved. Their consciousness operates on principles of collective intuition, almost the opposite of Vraxian logic. Hannah returned to the podium as applause filled the chamber. What we have learned through this unexpected first contact is that the universe contains intelligences as diverse as stars. The Vraxians attacked first because they could not comprehend our nature. Our response, the beautiful chaos of human creativity, was indeed unbeatable, not because it destroyed our enemy, but because it transformed them into something more, and in doing so, transformed us as well. Outside the chamber, the evening sky glowed with lights that were no longer threatening. Vessels from across the galaxy, bringing visitors eager to experience the species whose unpredictability had accomplished what no weapon could, teaching a perfectly mathematical mind the value of beautiful imperfection.